So what in the world does ISOE Super smell like? This is a question that you guys have asked me quite frequently. So today I'm going to tell you what it smells like and also offer 5 fragrances that feature this note. So if you're curious to learn about ISOE Super, a synthetic molecule, a synthetic note, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. Yes, we're talking about ISOE Super today. A very popular note that dates back to the 70s. I think it was first found or created in 1973, and it's been used quite a bit since then, a lot back and forth in different fragrances, and now we have a fragrance that features it on its own as a note in one fragrance. So I'm going to tell you all about this note, what it smells like, what you should do to check these fragrances out and all that good stuff, and also tell you a little bit about anosmia, because you might be anosmic to it. But before I get to all the information and the fragrances, if this is your first time tuning into my channel and you still haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So the first time I heard about ISOE Super was when I first smelled Molecule 1 from Escentric Molecules. This is it right here. So the very first time I smelled it, I smelled nothing. I was very, very anosmic to the smell. I kind of had to train my nose to it. I don't know what changed, but like after trying this fragrance on probably 4 to 6 times, and then eventually I started smelling it. Now I can totally smell it. It's 100% like I know what it smells like, and I love the way it smells. This is a note that I really love, and I love it in Molecule 1 and also in other fragrances. I mean, it's used a lot in perfumes when they want something that smells woody, slightly ambery and musky in a fragrance. It's used as a base note. So what does ISOE Super smell like then? So for me, ISOE Super smells like a very smooth and dry, woody synthetic note that is very cedar-like. And to me, it's a combo of mostly cedar-like smell with light sandalwood hints. I get the combination of both, but the majority of the smell is the cedar-like smell, and then I get the sandalwoody hints in there as well. But in addition to those 2 notes of the cedar-like smell with the sandalwood hints, I also get very light ambery touches, some light hints of vetiver, and then a little bit of very, very light and clean patchouli also comes in when I'm wearing ISOE Super. So all of those notes kind of come in when I'm wearing this synthetic molecule, and I'm wearing it usually by wearing Molecule 1. ISOE Super is basically used as a base note in fragrances, and it was created and trademarked by IFF, and IFF stands for International Flavors and Fragrances, and this happened in 1973. So it's been around for a while. It's been used quite a bit in fragrances, and some of the more standout fragrances that you might be familiar with are fragrances like Noire from Lalique. It's got lots of ISOE Super in there. You can totally pick it up if you start separating the notes. Like if you remove the vetiver from that fragrance, which is one of the more prominent notes in that fragrance, everything else is left as a pretty woody composition, and you'll kind of like, you know, separate and make the ISOE Super notes stand out. Another fragrance that also uses or features ISOE Super is Fahrenheit by Dior, dating back to the late 80s, when that was launched. Lots of it in the base notes. Fragrances like Hermes' Terre Hermes. You can totally smell it in there. There's a lot of woodiness in there, along with the vetiver, of course. So there's a cedary kind of sandalwoody base in that fragrance, which is ISOE Super. And another fragrance that I don't know much about is Fierce by Abercrombie and Fitch. So these are some fragrances that are very popular that you might have known about that use these notes that if you have them, when you're wearing them, kind of start smelling the ISOE Super, especially if you have this and you know what it smells like, and you can, you know, smell it here and then smell it in those other fragrances. See if you can distinguish the smells and have the ISOE Super stand out. Okay, so the first fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is Escentric Molecules Molecule 1. This is a fragrance that was created by Geza Schoen, who is the man behind the brand Escentric Molecules. And on the channel I have various videos on this particular house, and I've got many fragrances that I speak about all the different fragrances. In fact, one of the videos I have on the channel is for every single one of the Escentric fragrances, molecules, and the Escentrics, dating up, all the way up to the number 5 that came out earlier this year. So if you want to find out more about Escentric Molecules, you can do that. But with this one, ISOE Super, I was very anosmic to this fragrance when I first smelled it. I couldn't smell anything. It's just something very interesting with these standout notes, and the use of the quantity or the percentage of the notes themselves makes for anosmia. But you can train your nose, and you can kind of get used to it, and then you'll start smelling it. And I feel like this is a great fragrance to wear on its own for a very minimalistic fragrance. I have friends that wear tons of this. They love it. They love its minimalistic qualities, and when they're wearing it, I can totally smell the cedar woody combination on them. And once it blends in with their chemistry as well, their muskiness kind of combined with the woodiness, it is quite sexy. It's a great smell. And for me, when it's combined with somebody's body chemistry or versus just smelling it out of the bottle here, it gets a little muskier, obviously, and the smell changes a little bit. But what I get mostly with this one is, of course, the cedar-like smell, the sandalwoodiness that comes in there as well. There's a little bit of an ambery touch, and then I get a little bit of vetiver and patchouli in there as well, but not so much. It's just a great combination of a very cedar-like smell with some sandalwood. It's a great scent. Those of you guys don't like that, that don't like these really strong fragrances that have like multi-layers of notes that are like complex and dense, and just want something minimalistic, you can go with something like this, because in the end it smells great, it doesn't stand out too much. People do compliment you with this kind of a fragrance because, as I said, it's musky, it connects with your body chemistry, and you project a smell that people react positively to. So this is a great fragrance for you to check out, and I think you can train your nose by smelling this to start smelling or recognizing the smell of ISOE Super. Now, one thing I do want to say is there are inexpensive ISOE Super bottles you can buy off of Amazon. I think they sell them. They're kind of like not necessarily clones of this. They're just basically using the ISOE Super and selling it as is. So you can do it that way, unless you want a bottle of the real stuff. You should get the real stuff, obviously. But it's a great way to train your nose to figure out how this smells, the ISOE Super smells. And one last thing before I move on. This is a great layering tool. If you have a fresh fragrance that's very, very fresh and citrusy, or some other fresh notes, and it's not lasting long, I would layer, spray this down and then spray the citrus on top. I mean, sometimes it might not smell great. It doesn't, layer well together. So you gotta kind of have to smell the fragrance here, and then smell the fragrance you're trying to extend the life of. If you think that they might complement one another, then do that. Because sometimes when they clash, they're not going to smell great. So obviously you're gonna have to kind of pick and choose which fragrances. But I find it to be a great layering tool, especially with things like citruses, or just if you want to make something sweet like vanilla, a little woody, then I would layer this with it as well. But it's a great fragrance to wear on its own as a minimal fragrance, and it's got a cult following. A lot of people love this stuff. Every time I'd go into Barney's, when Barney's was around, every other time I'd hear somebody ask for a bottle of this stuff, so it's popular. Now, its counterpart, Escentric one, basically is the same fragrance using the ISOE Super in here with additional notes. According to the Escentric Molecules website, this is 65% ISOE Super in addition to lime, Hedione, Orris, balsamic notes, and musk. So in the end, it's a kind of a finished product basically, because here it's just one note. You're just wearing one note, and this one's actually, you know, other notes along with the ISOE Super. So basically they've created an actual perfume using that ISOE Super. So in the end it's citrusy, it's a little jasmine-y with the Hedione in here, slight powdery touches, but it has a nice balsamic base and musk. I feel like it's a great one. It's not one of my favorite Escentric molecules. Obviously I've used quite a bit of it because it still acts a little minimalistic even though it has all those notes in it, but I really do enjoy this one. So that's Escentric 2. Now moving on to another fragrance that features ISOE Super. We're talking about ISOE Super, as I said. This is a fragrance from a house called Jusbox, and this is Cheeky Smile. So the reason I'm selecting this fragrance is, I'm going to spray some on right now. It's a great sprayer, by the way. This thing has a great sprayer. So to me, if you like ISOE Super in Molecule 1, if you like Ambroxan in Molecule 2, you're going to probably like this one because it's a combination of both of those notes. But I feel like the standout note in this is definitely ISOE Super because it totally stands out with it. Like you can totally smell the woodiness of the cedar-like smell with the kind of a slight sandal woodiness. But it does get a little ambery with this one because it has that Ambroxan note. But in addition to those notes, there's also Ambrocenide, Cashmeran, Amber Xtreme, and of course the Ambroxan. So it's basically, I would call this a synthetic molecule cocktail, and it's very musky and ambery for me, but the amberiness is more from the synthetic. It doesn't act like a syrupy amber is what I'm trying to say. It's more like a woody ambery, musky, rather than like an amber syrup, if that makes sense to you guys. So the experience is different, but still it's an ambery experience, but very musky and also very, very woody. So that's Cheeky Smile, a great scent. I really do like that one because I like the combination of the ISOE Super with the Ambroxan and the additional synthetic molecules that are in there. So it's basically a great, I would say, for me, it's like almost like a toss-up, not a toss-up, what am I saying? It's almost like a combination of Molecule 1 with Molecule 2, or I would go to the extent of saying more like Molecule 1 with another 13 from Lalique, which is mostly about Ambroxan and Ambret. I get kind of a experience like that. So the next fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is a fragrance from a house called DS and Durga, and this is I Don't Know What, another fragrance that uses ISOE Super, and this is a fragrance that I believe this brand launched as a layering tool to connect or combine with their other fragrances to enhance them and to make them smell a little different. And what I like about this one is when it first came out, I tested it at Barney's. I didn't think twice about it. I thought, okay, it's just very minimalistic. I already have, you know, Molecule 1 or Molecule 2. But when I went down to LA last year and I went to Scent Bar in DTLA and I tested it there, man, the fragrance was so different in a very warm and muggy or humid environment, and this fragrance was like amazing on its own. I just had to get a bottle because of that, because it smelled fantastic when it's hot outside. Just the fragrance just opened up. And what this fragrance is known about is the ISOE Super. There's some freshness from Bergamot, there's a little bit of Vetiver acetate, there's some Ambroxan and Civetone. The Civetone is a synthetic civet smell, and it makes it very, very sexy, musky. It's really, 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 really great. It's one of those great minimalistic fragrances that I like to wear on its own. If you like fragrances like Another 13 from Lalique, you might look into this one. It's a little lighter than Another 13. It's not so Ambroxan heavy. It's more ISOE Super heavy, and still you would probably still have a anosmic experience if you've not really experienced yourself with Molecule 1 or ISOE Super. So before you get this, train your nose with the original stuff, because once you start smelling it, you'll smell a lot of these like minimalistic fragrances that use a lot of these you know, synthetic molecules to make fragrances. So I really highly recommend it, especially if you live in a warm, humid climate and you want something minimalistic. Let this, you know, connect with your, you know, own chemistry, and you know, when it projects off of you, you'll really get compliments. It's just that kind of a fragrance. Smells really, really great. But again, it's very, very minimalistic, so it's not anything like if you spray it, people down the hall are not going to smell you unless you know walk by them or pass them and they'll be like, wow, what's that scent you're wearing? Anyway, check it out, get a sample or something to test it prior to getting a full bottle. But I'd highly recommend you familiarize with the smell of this and a couple of other of the fragrances from Escentric molecules like Molecule 2 and Molecule 4 and 5. 3 is a pretty distinct smell, so you don't have to do much testing with that one. Last but not least, I'm going to talk to you about a very popular men's fragrance that uses ISOE Super, and I'm talking about the latest edition of Dior Homme. It's Dior Homme 2020. Totally different than Dior Homme original, totally different, and this time they're using tons of ISOE Super. It's popular. It's a very, very popular note. And of course here, in addition to the ISOE Super, they're also using cashmere wood. So 2 synthetic molecules along with cedar, vetiver, musk, and bergamot. But they credit cedar, and I feel like it's mostly the ISOE Super. So this thing can be chock full of loads of ISOE Super. Just like in Francois Demachy, who created Sauvage, and he basically used tons of Ambroxan in that one. Here he's gone to ISOE Super and adding this kind of like cedar-like sandalwoody smell. In the end, I prefer the original Dior Homme, but this one has its fans for sure. And those of you that like woody fragrances, slightly spicy, slightly musky, and a little bit of citrusy, I think this one definitely has fans. But I'm so into the original Dior Homme line of fragrances, this one to me disappointed me, unfortunately. But I'm sure anyone that's not smelled the original will probably like this one, because in the end it's a classy men's fragrance that's definitely on the woody, spicy side. Anyway, that's my last option, Dior Homme 2020 of ISOE Super heavy fragrances. Let me know your thoughts on these fragrances if you've tested them. Let me know if you didn't know about ISOE Super. What do you think about it now that you've watched this video? Are you curious to go test your nose with this note? Again, if you have an issue with anosmia, when you first smell it, you'll probably not smell it. Because, as I said, when I first was smelling it way back in the early 2000s, I was like, this doesn't smell like anything. I had to keep trying. And people said, keep trying. You're probably not going to smell it 1, 2, 3 times, and eventually you'll stop picking it up. And then it became really, really strong. Same thing happened with Molecule 4. I couldn't smell Javanol, which is a synthetic sandalwood smell. Finally, after 3-4 tries of that one, I can totally smell it. It's really strong. But some people complain that they can't smell anything. It smells like alcohol. It's because they didn't give it enough time. So give it enough time, test your nose out, let your nose learn the smell, and eventually you'll start smelling them. And then look into these fragrances that are minimalistic, that are amazing. Even Another 13 I find to be very minimalistic, even though that's using Ambroxan. It's this kind of a fragrance where it's you have to train your nose and kind of get used to it. And these kind of fragrances, minus this one, and of course the Escentric Escentric 1, are perfect layering fragrances. You can use them to layer, stronger fragrances to kind of like enhance them or to intensify weaker fragrances. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video, all about ISOE Super. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Please list below. Otherwise, please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.